Hello everyone, I'm Leo from China. I'm really appreciate I'm given this chance, and I'm from China, SGTU. And today I want to talk about assimilation. And I will introduce some cases from China as well as from America. Uh, Female, people of color, sexual minority, minority religion, as well as disabilities will all be introduced. Examples for sexual minority will be more than other cases because there's a typical group which has been through all the four phases of assimilation. Now you might wonder what is the relationship between assimilation and equal right. To know this, we need to redefine assimilation under the context of equal right. So first of all, what is assimilation? I translated this word into Russian, but I don't know if that helps exactly. So I'm going to explain this anyway. In the dictionary, it means the cultural absorption of a minority group into the main cultural body. We can make it more simply. It means A becomes more similar with B. However, under the context of equal right, we have two problems to be answered. Who is the one assimilating others? Who is the one being assimilated? And also, is the trend happening actively or passively? For the first problem, I think it's easy to know that the mainstream group is assimilating others, while the disadvantaged and minority group are being assimilated. We can take many examples, like the black people. The mainstream, the white people, wish them to behave more white. The specific requirements will be like wear high-end clothes, have clear indications, make friends with white people only, and women should not have any braids. And maybe you don't feel that in your real life, but if I took another example, like the LGBTQ group, you will find it's more easy to understand. The mainstream group, the straight group, wish them to behave more like straight people. And the requirements will be do not hold the hands of your same-sex couple and do not show off your sexual orientation. And here I used quotational mark for show off because those show off behaviors are totally normal when it comes to straight couples. So is this trend happening passively or actively? I think it's also obvious that this trend is happening passively. Because having braids is a kind of tradition for women in black people, and other choices like what they wear and what kind of friends they should make is also their freedom to choose. Now they need to give that up to please the mainstream, and it's the same for the sexual minority couples. Apparently, they are catering to the mainstream by giving up their freedoms, and for that, assimilation is happening passively. Now we can redefine the assimilation under the context of equal right. Assimilation is a kind of behavior that requires a non-mainstream group to approach the mainstream group. So let's get back to the very beginning. What is the relationship between assimilation and equal right? The fact is, assimilation is a way approaching equal right till the very beginning of this century, and is still main mode of equal right in almost all countries nowadays. To understand this phenomenon better, we need to have a better understanding of assimilation. So today we will concentrate on two things, the phenomenon of assimilation and how does law deal with assimilation. You will gradually realize that assimilation cannot lead us to equal right. So let's have a deeper understanding of assimilation. We can divide this behavior into four sections. It's caring, it's correction, impersonation, covering, and caring. I'll introduce them one by one, and in each case I will drop some legal cases, and you finally find out there is a progressive relationship between those four segments. So the first one is correction. So in dictionary, correction means to make something or someone right by all means. Here I added by all means by myself because that's what happened for the minority groups, like the infidels. Infidel is the Christianity's derogatory term for people of other religions, and Christianity might burn them unless they believe in Christianity centuries ago. And also, the same thing happened to sexual minority in the last century. And reverse treatment is very notorious, and I listed the wave of reverse treatment below, and you can see all those are very cruel and inhumane. And most important is that those means doesn't work, right? So actually, the reverse treatment doesn't only exist in the last century, it still exists today. And here is a case in China. It's electric shock therapy. Now you might wonder, is this legal in China? Actually, what I'm showing to you is the very first case of gay reverse treatment. This case happened in 2014 February, and Jen, the plaintiff in Russian the Estiates, went to a clinic for treating his homosexuality, and later he sued this clinic. So what happened during the treatment? He is firstly hypnotized and tied to a chair, and the doctors will play gay videos in front of him, I mean, in porns, and after he gets some physiological response, as you can imagine, erection, there would be an electric shock till he cannot insist or till he passed off. So in 31st June, this case came to the trial, and the trial lasted for 4 hours. But no verdict was handed down in the court. The verdict was announced in 19th December. The plaintiff won the lawsuit, and the verdict made it clear that homosexuality was not a mental illness and did not need treatment. So the answer is clear. Reverse treatment is illegal in China. It's not legal. Actually, in 2000, the third edition of Chinese diagnostic criteria for mental illness removed homosexuality from diagnostic criteria for mental disorders. However, the document still claims that self-disharmony, homosexual and bisexual is a sexual orientation obstacle and can be treated. Because of the case I introduced before, the experts in China are thinking about to remove this article from the document. However, from this case, we can see that the correction doesn't work for getting equal right, not only because it's inhumane, also because the reverse treatment is useless for correcting others' sexuality or some other characteristics. So now that correction doesn't work, then what about the other three parts, say impersonation? Impersonation it's a verb, right? If someone impersonates a person, they pretend to be that person. It will be more easy to understand if I take example like if one gay person impersonates straight, it means this gay person pretend to be straight. And there's a very famous case in USA. It's Boys versus Hardwick. And I translated the case brief into Russian so you can directly read. This case held the fundamental right to privacy as guaranteed by the Constitution does not extend to sex acts regarded as sodomy under state law, even if such acts take place between consenting adults in the confines of home. The case originated when a gay George man was arrested in his home for engaging in oral sex. There was another man in violation of state sodomy law. The Supreme Court, in sharply divided opinion 5-4, upheld the constitutionality of Georgia state on the grounds that it reflected a legitimate belief by society that certain sex acts are immoral and unacceptable. In notable dissent, Justice Harry Blackmun argued that the ruling violated one of the most fundamental rights of all, the right to be let alone. The decision in Boyce was overruled in 2003, but the point is this case lost at that time. But how is that related to impersonation, the pretending behavior? Actually, there's a story happened during the trial. The fact is, the case might be overturned, not only because the vote was 5-4, also because the final determinal vote is determined by Boas, and his legal assistant, Genius, is gay, while Boas doesn't know this at all. They discussed a lot about this case. During the process, Bob said to Genius that he doesn't even know one gay person in his life. Genius was quite shocked and was struggling if he should come out to boys. But unfortunately, he didn't step out. He just said that the right to love the people I choose is more important than the right to vote in an election. But both just answered might be, but it doesn't mean sodomy is constitutional right. Now you can't help wondering if Genius could choose to impersonate straight, if he choose to come out, the case might be totally overturned. Or what will happen if he really did say, we don't know, but at least we know. If you don't stand out to speak out for who you are, you will never get equal right. So impersonation doesn't work for pursuing equal right. And we shall look the rest of the simulation behaviors. Will the covering work? A covering is a noun, and a covering is a layer of something that protects or hides something else. You may wonder what's the difference between impersonation and covering. Actually, they're very similar, but there's a slight difference between the two. That covering is following a very basic principle that don't ask, don't tell. Covering is an act that accepting who you are while not emphasizing your difference. This is unlike impersonation. Like if I ask your sexual orientation, if you choose the covering strategy, you will tell me the truth once I ask. But if you choose impersonation strategy, no matter how I ask you, you will impersonate straight, you will tell me the fact. So in this part, I will talk about covering in people of color, sexual minority, and female groups, because covering is a very common behavior in assimilation nowadays, and it exists widely in almost all people. First of all, we'll look at people of color. And do you still remember the requirements for Black people in the very beginning? Actually, this is from this book called The Good Black, and the author was white, and the hero in this book is Lawrence Monking. Lawrence Monking was the roommate of the writer when he was in the law institution of Harvard. So the Monking is a good black as a definition in this book. He wears the most high-end clothes in firms, has clear education, and being incredibly gentle to discrimination he meets, and avoids any topics that might provoke a social movement. Actually, in the university, he never ate with other black students. Because as his creed, I want to prove that I have no difference with white people. Don't be afraid, I am a good black. However, this covering strategy didn't bring Monking justice, because gradually he realized that he will never get the position of partner of the law firm. So he decided to sue the law firm according to the Article 7 of Civil Rights. And what's the result? Actually, the jury was at first was almost all black, and Monking won. The court awarded him a 2.5 million in damage. However, an all-white court appeal overturned the verdict. So the fact is he eventually failed. After leaving the law firm, he said, I'm going to tell the public what kind of lives I used to live in. I thought people around me were tolerant and I thought black people were great, but I was wrong. As a matter of fact, I've been putting up with it for fear making white people uncomfortable. Now I'm tired of pleasing white, and I don't even want to talk to them. If they say hello, I'll say hello, but I won't bother to think about how to make them happy all day. It's too tired. So you can see in this case, the covering strategy cannot bring justice to Monking, and it also proves, at least in black people, the covering strategy has no help to equal right. So what about other groups? Say sexual minority. We can still share a legal case is Shanghai versus Boss in USA. Now that we've talked a lot about sexual minorities, so I want just to read this. You may just read the text. In this case, Shanghai didn't get the justice as well. She eventually lost her job, and the point is she never told boss that he had a same-sex couple because boss never asked her, right? And that's the definition of covering from the beginning of this section. Covering is don't ask, don't tell strategy. And this also proves that Shanghai is covering very well. So in sexual minority, covering strategy also doesn't work. Then what about females? The covering in female groups are more tricky because a female in real life, they always have to do a two-way covering. What I mean is if a woman behaves to women, others will call her lacking in walking ability. But if a woman behaves to men, others will call her lacking in virtue. And I bet you have heard that some women speak up for what she believes that got loved by men, and others call her lacking virtue, right? Actually, this can be shown in many books, like this one, New Woman's Dress for Success. Actually, in this book, it teaches a woman how to wear, like do not use light-colored pen to avoid being too woman. Teach women how to make up as so to avoid being too men. Encourage women to use shoulder pads, however, do not pat them into reverse triangle of men. And it's recommended to wear rings, but they cannot be shaking rings or you will look too woman. And hair cannot be too long or too short. From this book, it proves that the trick dilemma. And in real life, here's a case in China. This is a talk show actress, and I really like her. But in China, this woman is frequently tipped off and reported by men. But why men always find her trouble? You might wonder what did she say during one talk show. This is what she said. Men are not only beautiful and also very mysterious, that you never get to know what in his little mind. That is, he is obviously ordinary, yet he's incredibly confident. This joke is very common in China now, and because it's just the fact some men behave like this, and others laughing at them. And so this talk show might provoke those kind of men, and they frequently tip her off, like her talk show and also some advertisement that find her to do the advertise. It's just example that women cannot be two men in society because you always hear a man joke the same about women like this, but it's hard to hear that the mental actor, the talk show actor, got reported by those jokes. But it's just a talk show. We have more serious cases, like this one, Anne Hopkins. Cases of Anne Hopkins was a senior manager. Anne Hopkins was senior manager in office of Pricewaterhouse when she was proposed for partnership in 1922, and she was neither offered or denied admission to the partnership. Instead, her candidacy was held for reconsideration for the following years, when the partners in her office later refused to re-propose her for partnership, and she sued Pricewaterhouse under Title VII of the Civil Rights, charging the firm has discriminated against her on the basis of sex in its decisions regarding partnership. And the result is also, unfortunately, Anne Hopkins lost this lawsuit. So maybe in female groups, the current strategy also cannot bring you to justice. Now you might question me that maybe this is just coincidence, but actually if you do a further research of all the similar cases, you will find that no womanly woman wants this lawsuit. And it happened the same for homosexual and Black people. That is barely no womanly woman, homosexual acts like homosexual, Black people act like Black people want to trial. So what does this fact indicate? The fact indicates that the disadvantaged group has to cover the characteristics that belong to them in stereotype, and in front of the requirements of covering, even the law cannot protect them. I mean, homosexual acts like homosexual. That means it didn't do the covering behavior very well as the mainstream requires them to do. So they never won the lawsuit, and the same also happened woman and black people act like black. So the law cannot protect them from the requirement covering, and it's definitely not equal right. We can see the dilemma of equal right in law is that law cannot protect people from covering this behavior in assimilation. Or simply, the reason is law only protects to be, doesn't protect to do. I mean, if law protects me to be a black, then I can have braids without being fired. If law protects me to be a gay person, then I should have the right to tell people that I'm gay and without losing my job, right? It's certainly not equality if law only protects to be, doesn't protect to do. However, this is a fact, and this is why covering strategy do not work for equal right. Now the covering strategy also doesn't work. Then we only have one solution approaching equal rights if we choose assimilation, that is caring. Caring is more easily to understand. It's just feeling or showing care and compassion. The very typical groups which has been cared by mainstream is disability and minority religion. In China, we have law of the People's Republic of China on protection of disabled. And for minority religion, we have religious affair ordinance. The result is we can see the disabilities and people believe in minority religion are well protected under those laws. But why don't we extend those laws to also to other minority groups? Is there any difference between disabled minority religion and other groups? Actually, I think the difference between them is not the disabled and minority religion do not need to cover. The difference is that the law can protect them from being bothered by covering. How can I prove this? I will use the example of US President Roosevelt. As we all know, Roosevelt is disabled, right? Because his legs were crippled. But even though everyone knows that, when he called some officer in his office, he will still hide the wheelchair under his desk or behind the door. So the covering behavior also exists for disabled as well as minority religion, but on the street you can still see others do not cover themselves. You will see others losing legs or arms. They don't really cover, unlike the minority groups, right? The other minority groups, because the law protects them well. So can we extend this caring strategy to other minority groups? The answer, I think, is unfortunately no. The caring strategy can't be applied to other disadvantaged groups, because if we insist the principle of same case, same sentence, then there might be a slippery slope. That is, the minority groups might always win the lawsuit. This is another extreme situation that we don't want to see. And if we don't insist the same case, same sentence principle, there will be some preferred groups for the courts, and this is also injustice. Now, the conclusion we get now is that correction doesn't work for pursuing equal right because it's inhumane and it doesn't work. It cannot correct people. And impersonation also doesn't work for equal right because if you don't stand up to speak out for who you are, then you never get the equal right. And the covering strategy also doesn't work because law only protects to be, doesn't protect to do nowadays. And caring again failed because they might cause some other injustice we don't want to see. So assimilation approach, I think we can say is a failure in pursuing equal right. Now, what can we do and what shall we do for equal right? I think the answer is from civil rights to human rights, and this is also the idea of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Because civil rights put too much stress on the differences between people but ignored the common point we have. If we only put stress on the difference, then there will be tons of laws to make. Like we need some law for gay people, some law for disabled, some law for female, and some laws for religion, for minority religions, and some for black. So maybe in USA you got some laws for yellow and something like that. But there's tons of ways to divide people into minority and mainstream groups. So it will be a burden to the legislation system. And it's easier to protect the common point we all have. Like if the law wants to protect the right to wearing, then it could protect this as a freedom for everyone, not only the equal right for women and black. If the law wants to protect marriage, then it can protect this right as a freedom for everyone instead of the equal right for sexual minorities. So from civil rights to human rights, this is improvement for law that it needs to make. But you might wonder, is law enough for achieving the equal right? I mean, can we rely on legal system? A simple fact is that the only people who cannot communicate with each other will come to the court and sue each other. But in real life, the requirement of covering the discrimination happens in situations where the law doesn't and shouldn't control. These requirements and these behaviors happen between friends, family, your neighbors, and sometimes even you and yourself. Also, apart from this, a law is not a general solution because there are countless groups people are required to cover and so many potential discrimination and minorities out there. What I mean is easier to understand by this picture. What kind of tags we use to divide people into minorities nowadays? As the examples I given is gender, sexual orientation, color, and religion. But is that all tags we can use? I think clearly no. There are so many tags hidden in dark. And those are all the tags we can use to divide people into two groups, to mainstream and non-mainstream, to minority and majority. Like you never know, people will discriminate on others due to virus, due to vaccine, but that becomes questioned as a promotion of vaccine passport nowadays. You will be discriminated if you can't be vaccinated due to allergy. It's possible, right? You might argue that this is not equal because I'm born to be allergic to components in vaccine. But I don't think it will be a strong reason that can protect you from being discriminated because some people are born as gay and in this society, people are just doing them bad. And also, I believe nowadays the Indians get discriminated on the website, and I've seen many words about that. It's very sad to hear. So that's also a live example that discrimination happens due to many tags, not only those I've shown here. So that is why we should pursue for equal right, even just for the sake of protecting yourself. Because you can never guarantee under so many tags you won't be a minority one day. If we don't, I believe that we don't want any of those discriminations in life, right? If we don't pursue for equal right, what can we do if one day you become a minority? Like believing in luck that you will never divide it into minority. I think it's not a good strategy. I think the good strategy is believing love because that's how we easily eliminate all the discriminations. So to make sum up, the point of today is that strategy of assimilation cannot lead us to equal right, and we need a new mode. And this new mode is called from civil right to human right, because civil right put too much stress on differences, and we have countless ways to divide people, and we have countless minority groups, and there will be countless laws to make, and this will be burden to the legislation system. And we need to emphasize human rights. The example is that the law wants to protect the right to bear, then it should view this right as freedom for everyone instead of the equal right for black or women. If the law wants to protect marriage, then it should view this right as freedom for everyone instead of the equal right for sexual minorities. And beside all those, apart from all those, we cannot only rely on legal system, because most requirements of covering and discrimination don't happen on the court. It happens between family, friends, where law doesn't and shouldn't control. So we need more love to eliminate discrimination, even just for sake for protecting yourself. And that's all the ideas I want to share today. So thank you for listening and welcome your problems.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really interesting and we learned a lot.
Thank you.